This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to compare two tablets by popular demand. You asked for it, we're doing it. We have the 2013 Nexus 7 over here, running the latest version of Android 7-inch display, and we have the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 on the other hand over here. Slightly larger display, more creature comforts, more money too. We're going to look at them now. So here we have two top Android tablets, a lot of similarities, some important differences. So how are you going to pick which one is the better one for you? Hopefully we can help you with that. Obviously the Galaxy Note 8 is going to be a little bit bigger. It has an 8-inch display versus the Nexus 7 with the 7-inch display. And you know, I know some of you are wondering if it really does make a difference, that extra inch to make it feel more tablet-like, and I have to say it does. Now that we've got phablets and smartphones with 5-inch displays, the Nexus 7 here looks kind of like an overgrown smartphone in some ways, and the Note 8 is just big enough in terms of display size and overall size that you feel like you have a tablet, but it's not one of those big 10-inch tablets that might be a burden to carry around, kind of in the same camp as the iPad mini in iOS land. But in favor of portability, the Nexus 7, here you go, you can see right now, it's easy to hold. I do have fairly large hands, granted, but easy to wrap my hand around it, pretty easy to throw in your pocket, and both of these guys weigh around 3/4 of a pound. They're not too heavy. And our Galaxy Note here, I can still wrap my hand around me. You can see how little of my finger is left, and anybody with smaller hands, be a man or a woman, is going to have trouble holding this probably with one hand. You're going to end up using it as a two-handed tablet. Still, you do get bigger screen for your money. Obviously, there's somewhat larger side bezels here. The top and the bottom bezels, though, not so much, because the Nexus 7, as you can see, has a really big chin and forehead. But it is narrower here, and they did that actually just so you would have an easier time holding it with one hand. In terms of build quality and materials used, you're looking at polycarbonates and plastics on both of these guys. Really, it's a matter of looks preference, probably more than anything else, but unlike the last generation Nexus 7, this one doesn't have that neat textured stippled back that felt sort of like, oh, I don't know, a driving glove or something. It's just a sort of grippy plastic, Nexus logo on the back. Minimalist design. Reminds me a little bit of the iPad mini. Not bad looking, pretty thin. And of course the Samsung is going to be that shiny gloss plastic that they love. Now, new for Samsung is not just the gloss white color, which I actually like because it doesn't show fingerprints so much, but they've also got one in gold brown, which means brown with kind of golden highlights on the sides. So this is available in two colors. Nexus is just in black, but you know, black is the new black. Everybody likes black, so that's fine. I would say it's up to you as to which you think is better in terms of looks. Now, in terms of what you have on the tablet here, we have hardware buttons and capacitive buttons, or hardware button rather, the center button here. Some people actually like that because when they use it in a different orientation, it's not like the on-screen buttons on Nexus products. You can keep them in one place. Like some people like to read and actually have navigational control up top. There you go. So you can do that, for those of you who like to do that. The Nexus goes with the pure software on-screen buttons. So these are going to follow you and move. If you move into a different orientation, they're just going to stay here on the screen at the bottom. As to which you like, that's up to you. Both of these have front-facing cameras and 5-megapixel rear cameras. Now, the Samsung has its stereo speakers firing down here. Samsung was the one who kind of pioneered the front-facing speakers on tablets, and sadly, they seem to be abandoning it now. Audio quality on the Note 8 is just okay, especially you don't want to hold it like that and block your speakers. Not particularly impressive, moderate volume, and obviously very little stereo separation. If we take a look at the Nexus, they got pretty clever here. We have our stereo speakers on the back near the edge here and over here. So much better stereo separation. And also placed in a way, since this is not a very big tablet, that if you tend to hold it like that, you're not going to completely cover the audio. So as a result, this guy has better stereo separation. It's also a little bit louder and a little bit fuller, though they're, in terms of audio fullness, that is bass and things like that, they're pretty close. While the Nexus 7 keeps things minimal and it has controls in just about the same location as the first gen Nexus, you get power button here, there's your volume rocker, up top is your headphone jack. Nothing on this side. And down here we have our micro USB port, which is also a slim port. That's a new technology for doing display out. It's a little hard to find a slim port to HDMI adapter. Hopefully they'll start hitting the market soon. If we look at our Note 8, similar thing going on here with the volume. There's your volume rocker right there. Here's your power button. Aha, here's an IR window. This has a consumer AV remote for controlling your home theater gear, which is pretty darn cool. So that's a nice value-added feature. And in general, this has, Samsung likes to throw every feature in the world at you. Of course, you have the S Pen. We'll talk about that in detail later. We have our micro USB port here that is also standard MHL out. So for those of you who already have an MHL adapter, that works. And here we have our micro SD card slot compatible with SDXC high-capacity cards. So you can expand memory here. And Google really hates expandable memory. They've whacked the support for putting apps on SD cards with Android 4 and up. And in general, with Nexus devices, they just don't put expandable memory on there. Now, Samsung has a little hack that lets you put apps on an SD card with size, which is pretty darn neat. So if expandable memory is important to you, this is the way to go here, the Galaxy. Another important thing is they both have USB hosts, but again, Google's a little weird with their removable storage. You can plug in game controllers, keyboards, that kind of thing, and those are going to work, but mass storage does work on the Galaxy out of the box. It does not work on the Nexus. You're going to have to download a program like Nexus Media Importer, which isn't expensive. It's about $2 on the Google Play Store, but you're going to have to know that you need to do that and spend that little bit of money and make an extra step so you can start using flash drives. Obviously, still not SD cards. Now, a big feature difference between these guys is the display. 1280 by 800 display at 8 inches is about 188 ppi on the Galaxy Note 8. In its favor, more than pixel density is important actually with displays. You can see how rich the colors are. It's extremely bright, and Samsung really gets those great black levels with their displays. So if you compare that, we put them side by side again at the same angle, and they're both set to the same brightness right now. You can see the difference in color saturation right there and color accuracy. This has a little bit of a green tint, the Nexus 7, and I would say that the Samsung is a little bit more on target, but colors are just rich and blooming on it, and the blacks are deeper on it as well. So there you have it. If I was going to look at photos and watch videos, I personally would pick the Galaxy Note 8 because the color saturation, the contrast, the black levels all make for a more enjoyable experience. Now when you're talking about text reading, our Nexus 7 2013 edition here has the highest resolution 7-inch display available. That is 1920 by 1200 pixels. That's 323 ppi pixel density. That is an insane amount of pixels. And while it's hard to get Android to scale desktops the same on both, honestly, there is more detail in the Nexus 7. If you look at it, the buildings are a little bit sharper and a little bit crisper. Where you're really going to see the differences in text, though. If you're going to buy one of these and your primary interest, or one of your primary interests, is reading ebooks, reading web pages, then the Nexus 7 still is very compelling because sharpness counts over color saturation there. And we're going to take a look at an ebook on each so you can see. So here we have the two side by side, and both of these scroll very quickly and nicely. But if we take a close look at the text, you can see that it's just about impossible to see any staircasing on these letters at all on the Nexus 7, which is very impressive. A little less tiring on the eyes, even if you think, yeah, I see a little difference, not much. It does make for less tiring reading. Now, one thing that Samsung has is reading mode for their display. Now, let's see what that does to it. And what it does is it makes the display a little bit warmer, a little bit pinker. I'm not sure if that really helps at all. So for those of you who are wondering about the difference there with reading mode, I would say, other than a little color shift change and a little increase of contrast, not so much. Now we're in Google Play magazines, obviously looking at the same issue of Condé Nast Traveler right now, and you can see what it looks like. And for something that's more graphical like the cover, I actually still prefer the Galaxy Note 8 for its better contrast and its richer colors, but how about if we get into some text, though? And you can see about similar rendering speeds there. So now that we're looking at some text, the text is smaller, obviously, on the 7-inch. That's what's going to happen because it is smaller. But it is also quite a bit sharper, and even though it is teeny, I can actually read it without squinting or going, oh my god, this is so difficult to read. It's not that bad on the Note 8 either, though. You can see a little staircasing on those letters, but still, if it's high quality text like that, it looks pretty good. And now how about web browsing? The Nexus 7 comes with Chrome, which is the official web browser now. And Google's trying to do away with the old WebKit web browser. Samsung comes with both. Samsung keeps the WebKit web browser because they can do customizations to that to enhance some of the features on it. And also, one nice thing about the old WebKit web browser is you can sideload Adobe Flash Player if you need it to watch Flash videos. It's pretty much an HTML5 world out there, but there are still some Flash videos and obviously Flash games. Now on the Nexus 7 you can download third-party browsers like Firefox or the Boat browser if you want, and sideload Flash to get those working. But here's the look, and you can see again, this is a bit more readable at first because the text isn't as small. It's a bigger screen, so things are, well, a little bit larger and easier to see. However, when it comes to text clarity, when we look in real close, zoom it out a bit, just like that, so you can see one column of text manually. You can double tap to zoom as well. Text is a little sharper on our Nexus as expected. However, Samsung has a lot of contrast there, so it has the effect of kind of bolding the text, doesn't it, a bit, to keep it readable, but not quite as smooth. However, you know, the difference is really not as huge as you might think, probably for the average user who is not super duper eagle-eyed and picky about text. Now, in terms of speed, both of these are running on quad-core CPUs. We've got Samsung's own Exynos inside of the Galaxy Note 8, and that's clocked at 1.6 gigahertz as Mali 400 graphics, and this is running on a Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 Pro. That gets a little bit complicated there. Google and Qualcomm are calling it an S4 Pro, but it really has cores more like you would see on the Snapdragon 600, so go figure there. Anyway, 1.5 gigahertz, a little bit better than what we saw on last year's phones for the S4 Pro at any rate. In terms of CPU benchmarking on a variety of synthetic benchmarks, the Exynos actually tends to come out a little bit ahead. When it comes to graphics performance, the Adreno 320 graphics in the Nexus 7 come out ahead. So if you're buying this for gaming, 3D gaming, I don't mean playing Angry Birds. You can play that on just about anything. But if you want to play something like Batman Arkham City or A Bard's Tale, and gaming is an important thing to you, the Nexus 7 is going to pull ahead because of that faster graphics processor that's inside. And here's the usual bit of pure Android versus manufacturer customized experience. Samsung uses TouchWiz. It's pretty heavy-handed, but it actually has a couple of really useful apps and features. So on tablets, I don't mind it so much because there's a lot of value added. For example, they have Smart Stay. It uses the front camera to look at you, and it knows if you're still looking at the screen, it won't turn it off. Is there anything more annoying than when you're taking your time and reading a web page and the screen turns off? Well, not going to happen there if you enable Smart Stay. We also have multi-window. We got side-by-side apps. I'll show you that in a minute. And also different customizations of the drawer. Samsung has a transparent app drawer. We have the basic black background for seeing your apps here. Actually, black is more practical, isn't it? It might not be as pretty. It's easier to see. So on Samsung, with the Note 8, if we want to have two apps running side-by-side, first we'll go back into Chrome, and then we have our little multitasking drawer right here. Say I want the music player too. Just drag that. So I can control my music playback while I'm viewing the web. There's a whole slew of applications that are supported here. Both web browsers are email, your contacts, alarm, the gallery, the video player, maps, apps for taking notes with the pen. So that's a pretty neat feature right there. And speaking of the pen, we have the S Pen. Now, you know if you need this, hopefully. I know some of you are still on the fence about this. This is a pressure-sensitive digital pen. That means you can put this on the screen, rest your hand on the screen, and it's not going to get upset. And it's a much more precise, natural writing experience. Now, for those of you who can't think of a thing to do with this other than poke around on the screen, that's not an important feature. But for those of you who like to take handwritten notes, do digital art, drawing, that kind of thing, digital painting, this is a pretty neat feature. So, really, it depends on whether you have a use for that feature or not. Both tablets have about the same battery runtime. The Galaxy Note 8 has a little bit higher capacity battery, but Samsung's TouchWiz software consumes more battery. So you're looking at about an even run here, somewhere between 7 to 9 hours on a charge, depending on what you're doing. If the streaming video is going to be more demanding, for example, reading books is hardly demanding at all. When it comes to the cameras, they both have front video chat cameras and 5-megapixel rear cameras. Now, Samsung gives you a whole lot more features for the camera. There's our camera UI. We'll have it admire the Nexus. So pretty intuitive. You've got all sorts of things here to work with. Settings, GPS tagging, scene modes, many scene modes, color modes, timer, resolution, metering, outdoor visibility for your display. Timer mode also accessible over there. You can switch your cameras and you can go through different modes. Panorama, buddy shot for sharing with other Samsung products, single shot, cartoon mode, smile shot. So There it is, a lot of features. The camera can only shoot 720p video, though, however, the rear camera. Something to keep in mind. In terms of camera quality and the pictures that they take, it's pretty darn close. The Nexus has Google's typical circular UI, which I think is a little bit crazy making sometimes, though they've tried to make it a little bit easier to use here. So no clutter on the interface right there by default, and you can tap to focus, that sort of thing. And if you want to bring up the features, you do press and hold on the screen, and there are those little icons, and then you got to drag up. And I always feel like it's Where's Waldo. I'm just hunting after these things. There are fewer settings here, but nonetheless, we just switched to incandescent so it's blue. But nonetheless, I would say you don't have to have every feature in the world to take a good picture, certainly, and they're both quite capable of that. And this one can shoot 1080p video as well. So there you have it, two pretty capable tablets. The Samsung Galaxy Note lists for a pretty pricey $399 for the 16 gig version, and the Nexus 720 13 edition starts at only $229, and the 32 gig version is going to cost you a bit more. Both of these will be available with LTE. Right now you can get the Samsung with LTE. It's coming soon for the Nexus 7 for those of you who need 3G and 4G connectivity. But the Galaxy Note 8's been on the market for a while, and you can find it for around $300 to $330. So you're still looking at spending more money, but not quite as big a divide, perhaps, from the days of list pricing. Obviously, the Nexus 7 is for those who are very budget-minded but want something that's quality, well-made, good company standing behind it. It's not a no-name tablet. Superbly crisp, super high-resolution display there, very fast tablet, always going to get the latest version of Android. The Galaxy Note 8, great for those of you who need the pen, particularly for note-taking and digital artwork. For those who want a slightly larger screen, it does make a difference, makes it feel more like a tablet. It's easier on the eyes. And you get all that software from Samsung, the customizations. If you find that useful, like the floating video player or the side-by-side applications running on the screen together, well then score points for the Samsung. So that's the Nexus 7 versus the Samsung Galaxy Note 8. Both really nice tablets, and as you can see, it really comes down to what features are most important to you. Things like the S Pen, for example, or the multi-window feature here, or pure Android, and a little bit more portable form factor, less money too for the Nexus 7. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full review of both of these tablets, watch our video reviews of these tablets, and hit that subscribe button too.